Welcome everybody, and I am Councillor Scott Pater-Harris, the Chair of the Licensing Committee. Can I ask that all members and officers remain seated throughout the duration of the meeting? Just a bit of housekeeping. If the continuous fire alarm sounds, please evacuate the room and public gallery by the stairwells. Do not attempt to use the lifts. Please assemble near the Queen of Victoria statue in Guildhall Square. In order to comply with the Guildhall Trust Fire Marshal regulations, anyone who signed in at the Guildhall reception desk should sign out when leaving the building at the end of today's meeting. Everyone, when speaking via the microphone, just press the button basically. All members know how to do that, I'm sure. It's trying to get you to be quiet, that's our problem. Obviously, also members of the press and public are also permitted to record the meeting on the understanding that if it neither disrupts the meeting nor records those explicitly stating they do not wish to be recorded. Obviously, as I've said, I'm Councillor Scott Pater-Harris. I just want to do a bit of introduction. So I'm going to start to my left and I'll go with my legal advisor first, just to introduce everyone today.
Good afternoon, my name is Ben Attrell. I'm a solicitor employed by the Council.
I'm Councillor George Magic of the Paulsgrove Ward.
Councillor Daniel Weems, Hillsey Ward.
Councillor Lewis Gosling, Copner Ward.
Dave Ashmore, Councillor for Fratton Ward.
Councillor Stuart Brown, also of Fratton Ward.
Councillor Kimberly Barrett, Councillor for Milton Ward.
Councillor Liam Madden, Lib Dem, Nelson Ward.
Councillor Tom Coles, Fratton Ward.
Councillor Yinka Deniro, Charles Dickens Ward.
Councillor Shah, Goshen.
Jane Dodino, Local Democracy Officer.
Nikki Humphreys, Licensing Manager.
Thank you, that's everyone that's been introduced. Just a quick one, members. Obviously, do we have any apologies for absence?
Chair, we have apologies from Councillor Holder and Councillor Linda Symes.
Thank you. Any members, do we have any other apologies?
Yeah, could you add Councillor Jason Bjeckley, who contacted me about half an hour ago.
Thank you. I've just noticed that we've had Councillor Ben Swan into the room as well. So, Councillor Swan is here. Can we just note that? Thank you. Do we have any declarations of members' interests? No? Brilliant. I will sit down in a minute. It's just easier to stand with this big chair behind me. So, minutes of the previous meeting. We should go through those pages 7 to 12. Page 7, everyone happy with page 7? Page 8. 9. 10. 11. And page 12. So if everyone's happy, they agreed. I mean, I've proposed those, and everyone happy to second. They've agreed. Councillor Magic, thank you. We've obviously the items on the agenda. I'm just going to vary the agenda. I'm going to go for the bus lane report first, rather than the actual Hackney carriage and private hire matters adopted a statement of policy, because I think we've got a deputation here today, and I'd rather we did that and then moved on to the second item of the agenda, which I think is going to probably be a bit longer. So, do we have Mr. Mick Abbott? Would you like to give your deputation? And then we'll have Nikki to introduce the report afterwards. Thank you.
Lovely. Yeah, afternoon everybody. Thanks for listening. I realise everything's been passed on this and we're going to have a trial on the bus lanes. I'd just like to say, just my opinion, from a safety point of view, I'm going to read this now, it'll be easier. What with buses, hackneys, unlicensed scooters, licensed scooters, e-bikes, bicycles, seeking to add potentially 5 times as many private hire vehicles, some of them unmarked in the case of Uber, so maybe private cars will think they can follow them. Trying to add those as well as hackneys is a bit mad. I didn't really mean mad when I wrote it, but sorry, no offence, I wrote that. Hold up points. Right, Queen Street into Bishop Crispin Way, you have a limited length of bus lane. Once this is full, traffic will be halted with the amounts of private hire vehicles wanting to make the journey to town centre. And customers being customers, they'll always want the cheapest route, so they want to go that way. They won't want to carry on down the Market Way and come back, because it's costing me more, mate. You have the potential for long, large queues and traffic stopped unnecessarily, which is contrary to what you're trying to achieve, which is traffic flow and in the clean air zone, less pollution. So that's that. That's about all I want to say, really, bar 12 years for cosmetically and mechanically sound vehicles would be handy. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Abbott. Nikki, would you just like to introduce the bus lane? Oh,
I'm sorry.
yeah, he's going to turn his microphone. Brilliant. Thank you. Would you like to just introduce the bus lane report, Nikki, after hearing from Mr. Abbott? Thank you.
Chair, would you also like me to mention that the committee has received a number of written deputations, both on the bus lanes, and that you have read them and you have...
Yeah, I think it's worth mentioning, but I'm reading on this, it's mainly on the bus lane, but because the bus lane's a noting report, isn't it, effectively? So we're not making a decision today, whereas the actual report we're making a decision is the secondary report, which we're going to be discussing later. So you can make reference to it, but I think it's going to be taking more of an effect later, but carry on.
It was just so that the persons that made the deputations know that the committee have got them today. That was all, Chair. Thank you. I'm here to present the report on behalf of Directorate of Regeneration, and it's really to update, as the Chair had requested, on the trials to allow Portsmouth City Council licensed private hire vehicles into bus lanes. You'll see by the report that it sets out the background to how this item came before the Cabinet Member for Traffic and Transportation in July. The report does set out the number of the recommendations that the Cabinet Member made, and that is that there is a trial scheme approved, and the report lists those trial bus lanes that private hire vehicles will be allowed to use. They've also requested delegated authority to cease or amend the trial locations if any safety issues become apparent throughout the duration of the trial, and also some delegations there to release funding to allow monitoring of the trial scheme, and that will be coming from the parking reserve and not the licensing budget, obviously. It is also noted that the consultation will continue with the working group as it has done throughout the duration of the discussions, and that you as the licensing committee will continue to be briefed on the progress or otherwise of the trial. And that finally, that a report will be brought back to Traffic and Transportation within 6 months of the trial launch, so that there can be an update and considerations in relation to the progression and the next steps. I think it's clear, or it should be pointed out, that this scheme to allow private hire vehicles only extends to Portsmouth licensed vehicles only. So any other vehicles licensed with other authorities will not be allowed access to those bus lanes. It is just for the privilege for Portsmouth vehicles only. I think, members, obviously you've read the report, and I don't know whether I have some potential questions and responses that Traffic have provided, just in case I can't answer. If they're not there, I promise to go back to Traffic and provide a full response to the committee in due course. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for that, Nikki. Do we have any questions, members? Any comments? Councillor Madden.
Thank you, Chair. Sometimes when we do reports, it's very difficult for the public to understand, but we have these reports where we can make all sorts of comments on and agree amendments and whatever, and we've got these reports, a lot of which come to the committee that I chair, which are for noting only, or for, what do they call it? Whatever it is. I heard the deputation, Mr. Abbott, and I think the whole point of this is a trial, so it's an experiment. If you take the taxi trade as a whole, a lot of people out yonder don't understand the difference between hackneys and private hire, quite frankly. And so people will turn up, they'll phone, or they'll go onto a taxi rank, and they'll get home or get to the destination they want. And if they see other cabs, which I think are the same, actually using bus lanes, there's a bit of annoyance about that. I have no problem with it at all. There could be an argument to say there should be more. I've driven along all of them except for Cowell Drive, I have to say. I had to look up where that was. It's on the map on this show. So I think it's an experiment. I think the second point, bullet point there is important. Delegate authority to immediately, split infinitive, there you are, to immediately cease any or all of the 5 trial locations if safety issues become apparent. So I think that's an important bit in there as well. There will be a report back to this committee, there will be a report back to the cabinet member. And the reason, of course, that is for noting is because the cabinet members already made a decision, and it was at that stage the representations could be made to the cabinet member. So this, in fact, is the property of the cabinet, if you like, and the council as such. But I have no problem with it as such. I think it's worth an experiment or the trial of it, and I think all the conditions there, as outlined by Nicky Humphreys, the licensing manager, are fairly good. It'll come back to us anyway after the trial, and if there are any particular problems or if we don't want it, we make the representations at that stage. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Do you have any other comments, members? Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Chair. I suppose it's a question for Nicky. Looking at the specific bus lanes that have been included in the trial, I know there was some talk at the tail end of last year about having every bus lane included in the trial, and I understand potentially for financial reasons that might not be viable. Are we reasonably confident that the 5 selected lanes will give us the right data to be able to extrapolate out to the whole 53 bus lanes in the city, whether or not the trial has been successful, whether it's been unsuccessful? Are we confident those 5 lanes are going to give us the right data to make a judgment call at the end of the trial?
Thank you, Councillor. Unfortunately, my colleagues in traffic have been able to preempt that question that members might ask. The question that they put forward is how were the bus lanes being put forward for the trial selected? And the advice given is following the decision to postpone the trial, an exercise is undertaken to improve the methods of monitoring the impacts of the trial and reasonable steps taken to ease safety concerns relating to the trial through evaluation of accident data. Initially, the bus lanes were reduced to those that already had existing infrastructure that could assist in the monitoring of the trial, such as enforcement cameras or Bluetooth journey time monitoring sensors. The remaining bus lanes were then subject of assessment of accident data, which resulted in a short list of the 5 bus lanes. These bus lanes were then subject to road safety audits prior to being put forward in the report. The amendments to the trial have resulted in a series of benefits, some of which are the ability to monitor the impacts of a trial in greater degree of detail, which would not be financially viable at a citywide scale. The proposal of a trial that avoids areas with a high level of recorded accidents, and a trial covering a range of conditions such as varying layouts, road speeds, the presence of parallel lines for normal traffic, and interface with signalised junctions, conditions seen elsewhere in the city. So I think my colleagues in traffic considered all of those matters and felt that those 5 lanes identified met with all the criteria they would need to assess for the city-wide.
Any more questions? Okay, it's just I have the unenviable hat of sitting on 2 committees where effectively we have to discuss this as the Conservative spokesperson for traffic and transportation. I've discussed this already once, and I mean, I have a comment on that, what I believe to be true. I don't believe that 5 is enough. I mean, and what I think Councillor Madden mentioned earlier, is it probably enough? It probably isn't for a data set that we want. However, we are where we are. I've argued that point once already. It's futile arguing it here today because there's no one here to actually listen to it from, as the cabinet member hasn't come along. That's my belief. I don't know how members feel about that, but I think as a committee, I think we asked for a bus lane trial, and to be given 5 I don't think is acceptable. Do members have any comments? Councillor Swan.
Yeah, I have to agree with you, Chair. I was quite surprised when I saw this about how can this possibly give us any viable, useful information.
And I'm going to make a point that the officer mentioned, and I know it's not your report, Nikki, so apologies, but the way the bus lanes have been selected, I've actually asked this question about what happened to discount the other bus lanes, and I asked that over 2 weeks ago, and I still haven't had a response. So I think it's worth this committee knowing that as soon as we know what discounts certain roads, for example, I'm going to use Northern Road and London Road as 2 examples where there are major bus lanes that run through the artery of the city, why they haven't been chosen, and I wasn't really given a definitive answer. I think when I do get those answers, I'm happy to share them with the licensing manager, to share them with the rest of the committee, so we can sort of understand the rationale about why certain bus lanes have been picked and why they haven't. Are we able just to minute that so it's noted, so we can actually, and also Nikki, can you please comment that to our counterparts in traffic and transportation? So I think it's worth the committee knowing on what basis that certain roads are selected and certain ones aren't. Because at the moment, I think this report doesn't really tell us. It just tells us that a big cab will drive on these reasons. Also, just for the committee's benefit, we mentioned about the trial can be ceased if safety issues become apparent, and that is the case. Just a bit of clarification, it can't be ceased if there are issues with bus times and issues with bus being delayed or anything. I asked that question in traffic transportation, and the cabinet member obviously couldn't do that because that's not what the report's telling her to do. So effectively, the decision's made that if there are any safety issues, certain areas will be binged straight away. But that's it. Do you have anything else? I'm happy to move on to the next agenda item. We've got lots of nods. I like that. Thank you. We'll move on. And over to you, Nikki, to introduce the second report.
Thank you, members, and I do apologise for the amount of documentation that came with this report, but hopefully I will keep the report brief and leave the floor open to members to ask any questions that they have in relation to the report. So, members, the purpose of this report is to consider proposed amendments to be adopted within the Statement of Licensing Policy in relation to hackney carriage and private hire vehicles. And it is important to note and implement the changes to the policy having regard to the statutory taxi and private hire vehicles standards guidance, which has been issued by the Secretary of State for Transport in July 2020. This is effectively the document that has been influential in bringing this report to you, to look at your policy and to look at where you may need to look at amendments to that policy to accord with that statutory guidance. So we are looking to you as officers today, members, to look at the policy amendments for the trade and permit public consultation on those recommendations between the period 1st of August and 30th of September 22, and the nature of the consultation will involve any interested parties, other authorities, and I will ensure that every single licence holder will be contacted separately to be made aware of the consultation, the key drivers, and to encourage them to respond so that you will be able to consider those in due course. And obviously, we will be looking for the committee to convene at a future date to consider all of the responses that come through via that consultation, and then to determine its policy having regard to that. So you have the various recommendations there, which basically I've just summarised for you. The only other point that is covered there is recommendation 3, that we were asking you to note the use of the existing penalty point system that is a policy for you, and any other delegated powers that officers have to enforce a requirement that PCC prescribed livery must be displayed on licensed vehicles. I can come on to that later as it is expressed in paragraph 3.4 of the report, but that change to the recommendation followed your meeting in December, when the members of the committee made it quite clear at that meeting that the use of magnetics was still to be continued, notwithstanding concerns from officers of the licensing service. So as background members, you have a policy that was first adopted in 2016, and this has been amended, ad hoc variations over the course of years, and paragraph 3.3 sets out what those matters are that we have looked at. As I said, paragraph 3.4, you did consider this report on the 16th of December in relation to vehicle livery, and can confirm that this aspect of the consultation and the associated recommendation has been removed from the report in its entirety. And instead, what we've set out in the report for members is a proposed way forward in terms of enforcement against those drivers or proprietors that refuse to put the prescribed livery on their vehicles. So you have as Appendix A to your report, going on to the main thrust of the report for you, you have as Appendix A the published statutory best practice guidance from the Secretary of State. And this guidance puts on a formal footing the standards, the expected standards to both initially, so it's a first step, minimum standards to ensure and to consequently maintain public safety. In Appendix B, I have set out for you all of the recommendations. That's the document that you perhaps should focus on as the main requirement today, because that sets out for you comparisons between what the DFT say we should be doing and what your policy says we are doing, and the recommendations arising are from where there is a gap within those policy recommendations, or indeed where we are currently compliant with those standards. And I would suggest to you, and I hope that you'll agree when reading or when you've read the report, that PCC's policy is in the main compliant with the statutory standards now expected, but there's further areas that we need to tighten up on. I don't think there's anything much more that I can go through in that report. You have all the documents, and I think probably if you have any questions in terms of the consultation document that we will go out with, subject to your approval this afternoon, members.
Thank you for that, Nikki. Do we have any questions, members? Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Chair. So any members who were on the committee last December might remember that I went through with quite a fine-tooth comb quite a lot of the recommendations. Nikki, don't worry, it's not going to be quite as much of an interrogation this time. But there were 4 of the recommendations that I wanted to have a quick look at. With the rest of them, I'm very pleased to see that we're already either in line with DFT guidance or can very easily be made to be in line. That's very good news for the consultation, that we don't need a huge raft of work to make us compliant. But in Appendix B, there were 4 sections I just wanted to ask brief questions about. So the first one was 3.4, which is the retrospective review. And obviously I understand the need that, if a driver is found to no longer be compliant following a review, that they would have to have a review of their licence. But is there some assurance that there won't be an immediate suspension of the licence and they will be given a grace period to bring themselves up to scratch? Under section 4.2, just a small comment really, I'm not entirely sure why the DFT have a notice period twice the length of ours. This is about the notification of arrest and release. If the DFT wants it to be 48 hours, fine, we're already stronger than that, and I don't want this to be seen as if we're relaxing our rules, but again, no major objection. 4.5, just a comment, I think that this is a really important area of the policy. This relates to the working with other areas, other licensing authorities, about out-of-city licence holders. We know from lots of cases going on in the city now and in the past that there are issues with drivers who are licensed from other authorities, one which keeps getting mentioned in particular up in the Midlands. So yeah, I think when we do have this work together, it needs to be as efficient and as strong as possible to make sure it works. And the last one is number 6, where I'm not quite certain if what's being recommended is what the guidance is saying. So this is relating to the 6 monthly checks for those registered with the DBS update service. If I'm reading it rightly, and please correct me if I'm not, it says that those who are registered with the update service need to be able to prove that they are, so that they can have routine checks done every 6 months, and those who are not subscribed should be subject to an enhanced check every 6 months. I think what's being proposed is that all of them have an enhanced check every 6 months. Is that right? That's it for that section. Quick comment on the 3.4 of the main report. I'm very glad to see that the recommendations and the views of the committee from last time have been taken in, and actually I quite like the compromise that's been put forward.
And please lead me, Councillor, if I've not made a note of which ones, please lead me if I've misheard any out. In terms of the self-reporting, I note your comments in relation to 24, that the DFT is saying 48 rather than 24. The only rationale I can come up with is if somebody has been arrested and they may be in custody for longer than 24 hours, that might give the 48 hours that would not put them in breach of a condition if they weren't able to make that report if they were still in custody. So that's the only rationale that I can think that they would extend rather than decrease. Which one was? Sharing information, yes, we do share information locally at the moment, but it is a strong recommendation and the council is being pushed to sign up to the NR3 database so that we can put refusals of licences and revocation of licences on that register. But that doesn't include anybody that may not pursue an application if we as officers give an indication at an early stage that we're not going to support this application because of these matters. We wouldn't be able to report that on the register. It's only when sanctions are applied by way of revocation or non-renewal for reasons. So there's still a gap, but we already fill that gap by our current policies, because on our application forms we don't just ask people if they've got a licence elsewhere, we also ask them if they've ever made an application before and not pursued it. So we've kind of covered that if we need further information from any other authority. The DBS checks, it is a bit of a nightmare. The online service, because the DFT are now saying you must do checks on drivers every 6 months. If we do it through the online system, that makes it a lot easier for the council and my officers to go and look on DBS online to just verify that there aren't any further convictions. If somebody didn't want to sign up to that, and why I think it would be cheaper for them to do that, it's £13 a year. If they choose not to do that, then their recourse then is to complete a manual DBS application check form. And that would cost them, I think it's 38, I think it's down to £45 every 6 months for them to do it the manual way. So the most common sense approach, both in terms of officer time and the convenience to the licence holder, is to very much regulate that the DBS service online is the one to pick when they're applying and renewing licences. And there was another matter, wasn't there, and I've forgotten that one.
Recommendation 3.4 about the updating of recommendations.
I think that this is a new response. Previously with policies, and I'll get Ben to just verify this from a legal perspective, we certainly in terms of vehicle standards, we never retrospectively applied. So the policy came to an end. If persons had had a licence prior to then that was under a previous policy. This is a change in that approach that the DFT are recommending. So yes, we would be notifying them probably at the renewal time. So when their licence next came up for renewal, that would be the time that the licensing authority could review the suitability of that person. We wouldn't seek to do it at any other time other than for a new application. And obviously, if there are any individuals that will fall foul of that retrospective look, then that would be a matter to come before the licensing subcommittee, and it would be for the subcommittee to make that decision on that individual, how that policy should apply retrospectively.
Just one very quick follow-up, if I might, Chair. Nikki, thank you for that. Really useful. I just want to go back to the one about the DBS checks, because I think one of the recommendations there doesn't quite fit with what you said. I completely agree. Using the online system will save a lot of time, a lot of hassle, a lot of money. But recommendation 23 says that the licensing committee require all drivers to be subject to an enhanced check every 6 months. Doesn't that counteract the whole point of having the online system?
I think maybe I should clarify that, Councillor, to say through the online system, because no driver receives anything less than an enhanced check through the DBS. I think I've obviously not, I've left off that we do it through the online, but enhanced is the only checks that we do.
Thank you for the clarification.
Any more, Councillor Brown? Councillor Madden, did you have some questions?
Oh, sorry. Well, my question was how we're going to proceed. We can pick up points. I think my suggestion would be, having gone through all this in great detail, is to go straight on to Appendix B, which actually lists the 37 recommendations and our response to them. If members are happy with that, Stuart will probably pick up further points as we go along with it. Can I just say there is one person here today who has made an invaluable contribution to this debate, and that's our own Ben Attrell there. You'll see in Appendix C, he's in the Institute of Licensing and come up with a very good report, actually. I didn't have any comments on that. But I think all the points are picked up in Appendix B, Chair, so I suggest that we, page by page perhaps, on Appendix B, so that we are seen to cover everything. Thank you.
I'm happy to do that, Councillor Madden. I mean, I've done this already once before, and I know several other members have, so if you've got points you want to raise and we'll go page by page, I'm happy to do that. But is there any points particularly on what I'm going to say would be page 64 for members in their packs on the recommendations?
Yeah, I think just for the public, we need to, I would suggest that every recommendation be called out.
Okay.
Sorry, just to make sure that people
That's
know
fine.
we
It's
do it properly.
3.0, which is licensing policies, the recommendation. Anyone have any questions or comments on that? No, no one's gesturing. 3.1, which is the duration of licenses. Anyone have any questions or comments on that? Nope. Go to 3.2, whistleblowing. Does anyone have any questions or comments on whistleblowing? No. Consultation at a local level. Do you have any questions or comments on that? Nope. Changing licensing policy and requirements. We've already had the question and comment on that. Do we have any more? Nope. Section 4, gathering and sharing information, disclosure and barring service. We've already had questions and comments on that. Do we have any more? No. Common law police disclosure. Do we have any questions or comments on that? Nope. Licensee self-reporting. We've already had questions and comments on that. Do we have any more? Nope. Referrals to the disclosure and barring service and the police. Do we have any questions or comments on that? Nope. Working with the police, 4.4. Do we have any questions or comments on that? It says that we're already doing it, so I imagine not. 4.5. Do we have any questions or comments on 4.5? This is about sharing with other authorities. I think this is something that we have discussed recently at full council, so I'd be surprised if we have any comments. No. Multi-agency safeguarding hub. Do we have any questions or comments regarding the multi-agency safeguarding hub? Nope. Complaints against licensees. Any questions or comments? Nope. Overseas convictions. Do we have any questions or comments? Nope. Section 5 decision making. The administration of the licensing framework. Obviously we already are using the current practice, so I imagine we won't have any comments on that. Training the decision makers. Do we have any questions or comments on that? I thought you were going to comment on that, being the chair of GANS.
Well, yeah, my understanding is that it is compulsory. Planning, I think the only two compulsory ones we have are planning and licensing. But I have no idea whether everybody who comes along to a licensing meeting has been trained beforehand, because nobody ever tells us. So presumably if we keep this in, we'll have to ensure that people cannot attend anything to do with licensing until they've had the training. And to be fair to licensing, they do it fairly on in the municipal year, whereas others seem to hang about a bit. But I would think that you must have the training on licensing, so I would agree with that.
Okay, thank you for that, Councillor. I would just note that no member can sit on a subcommittee without being trained, and I think that is the right thing to do. And I know that the licensing officers, along with Democratic Services, won't allow a member to sit unless they have been trained, and obviously I'm quite confident everyone here has been. Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Chair. I think my understanding is that you have to have been trained, but not necessarily on an annual basis. So I know, for example, I haven't done licensing training this year, but I did when I joined the committee last year. So I think the question is whether or not we want to have mandatory annual training, or whether we want to say at the beginning of each of your elected terms you undergo the training, for example. There's a balance to be found as to what the right update is. Perhaps also maybe having a clause where if there are any major updates to licensing law, all licensing committee members would have to undergo retraining to reflect that.
I mean, I think that's a very good point, and I mean, I'm going to use myself as a case example. Generally, if there's some policy change or some case law, I generally walk in the office and the licensing manager can testify this, and I'll ask the question, you know, what is this about? Can you explain it to me? And I think it's down encompassing all members to do that, especially members of the licensing committee, to actually, you know, go and, you know, it's like being at university again, you have to go and teach yourself a bit and pay for it. You know, so I think it's all encompassed on us to actually go and do that and really show the interest that we should. But I think annual training is good, I think, but also some refresher training as